Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jason Johnson, amateur radio operator, Kilo 3 Juliet, Sierra Juliet, and today I'm going to walk through the process of how you can use a program I developed to convert a code plug from the Anytone DMR radio to a new radio that's just been released on the market called the CS7000, which supports the M17 digital mode, which is a new mode that's been recently developed. And I'm going to go over briefly what the mode is, and then I'll walk through the process of how you can use the program to convert your code plug. So let's start out by talking about what is M17. M17 is a new digital mode for amateur radio that is completely open source. Other modes in amateur radio use a codec such as DMR that is proprietary and has to be licensed. M17 is different in that it's totally open source and built by other amateur radios for amateurs ourselves. I've gone to the Internet Wayback Machine for the M17 project to provide a little bit more information on the screen here. They're currently in the process of redoing their webpage. So if you want to learn more about that particular details of M17, you can go there. Particularly, one thing I will point out is this use of something called Codec 2 voice encoder, which is a free encoder. It doesn't have a patent on it, which means that you don't have to pay for a license to use it. And there's another program called FreeDV that I would encourage you to take a look at. FreeDV is a digital mode that can be used on HF, and it uses, I believe, OFDM modulation and this codec that's used for the M17 project as well. So you can learn more about FreeDV by going to the website freedv.org. So for the particular case I had, a friend of mine, Rob, Kilo Charlie 3 Whiskey Uniform Tango, he purchased one of these Connect systems, CS7000 M17 Plus UHF radio. So this is a UHF radio. It's interesting that it has two separate ROMs in the radio. One ROM, firmware, supports DMR, which will allow you to make DMR calls, as well as analog calls. And the second mode is the M17 firmware using OpenRTX, and that allows you to make M17 calls as well as analog calls. And if you want to switch between the modes, all you have to do is hold the orange button on the top of the radio, and then there's a lower two buttons here. You press one of them while you're holding the orange button and turn the radio on. That will boot into the OpenRTX. But then if you want to use the other one, the DMR mode, you just hold a different button, and you would, when you're booting it up, it would enter DMR mode. So there's more information you can learn about that from their website. My friend Rob asked me for some help to get the radio programmed, and it does support its own custom programming software, a CPS software. But one thing that I found was that it did not support a code plug from the Anytone radio, so you can't import that. And also there's a program by operator November 0 Golf Sierra Golf, which has a conversion program to convert a variety of different radios into CSV files. But unfortunately, it would support the older version of the radio for the code plug, but it would not support this particular revision. This is a newer revision, and I'm not sure if the GSG program is still maintained. So I had a problem. We have a code plug with Bowie Wireless Association with a number of repeaters and channels, and I didn't want to have to type all that in by hand. So what I did is I went and created a program to do that. And this is my GitHub page you can go to if you're interested in getting the source code. This is all free, and you can use this as you see fit. And what I'm going to do is walk through how you can use this program to convert a code plug. So this is written in Python, and I do have a GUI, a very simple GUI that you can use to use the program. I will not be covering how to get this up and running. It's a little bit beyond the scope of the video. I will just briefly say that if you want to use this on Windows, you'll need to install the Python programming language, which will provide the base language as well as the libraries needed to run this GUI. And then if you want to download the source code, you just click this down button for the down arrow. You would download the zip file, you would unzip it on your file system somewhere, and then from the command line, you would just type Python space in this name of this program to launch it. So that's how you could get it running on your system. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll walk through the process of how I converted Rob's code plug into the format used by the CPS software. So this is the Buoy wireless code plug, the K3BWA base code plug that we provide on our website. And Rob has made some additions to this particular code plug. He has two hotspots. He has a simplex hotspot on 438.25 UHF. And he also has a dual hotspot also on UHF with some other talk groups. I did neglect to mention the CS7000 radio only supports UHF in the 400 to 512 megahertz band. And as you notice in this code plug, there are some UHF channels, but there's also VHF channels and for local repeaters. And we need to account for that because we won't be able to use these channels in particular programming for the CS7000. So the first process is we need to export the talk groups, which we have here. There's talk groups on the code plug. We need to export these. We need to export the channel list, which is a list of channels on the radio. And then finally, we need to export the zone list. So to do that, on the Anytone CPS software, you go under Tools menu, Export. And we're going to pick just a portion of the code plug we want to export. The first one I'm going to pick is channel. And I'm going to go ahead and have a certain directory I'm writing this to keep track of everything. So I have an Anytone Kilo Charlie 3 Whiskey Uniform Tango. So I'm going to write these files in this directory. And I'm going to call this Anytone channels.csv. Next, I want to pick the zone. And I'm going to write it in the same folder. And this I'm going to call Anytone zones. And then the final one is I want the talk groups. So I'm going to click on this one and want to call it Anytone talk groups. Or I'll actually call it contacts. And I'll save that. Now with these three things selected, I'm just going to click the export button and it should tell me export is complete. Okay, now at this point, I've exported those CSV files into a folder. What I want to do now as well is I'm going to go over to the CPS software and I'm going to go ahead and create a new code plug. And this is the CS7000 M17 Plus. Okay, before we get started working with any of the talk groups, channels, or zones, we're going to set up some basic information in this new code plug that we've created. So we'll start by going under General Settings, and I'll just leave this to be my radio for the alias. Second line, I'll put my friend's name. And then under the conventional menu, under the Digital Common Basic, this is where you'll put your DMR ID on the first setting. So I'm not going to do that for now. I'm not going to put Rob's number in there, but I'll just type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll leave it at that. For this particular case, you're going to have to put your radio ID in that, and you'll have to have a radio ID from, obviously, repeater ID when you register for your DMR ID. So for this step, do not use this number. Again, make sure that you use your particular number. And we'll go ahead and click Close. That's set. And click Close there. So what I'm also going to have to do is with this CPS software, they also provide an option to export your digital contacts, your channels, and your zones. But for this particular export, they're exporting spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets. So I'm going to pick this. I'll create a new folder. I'll call this CS7000 default. Okay. And we are exporting, which one did I pick? I've already forgotten. I want to export the contacts, digital contacts. So I'll go up a directory. And this is CS7000 contacts. And likewise, I'm going to have to go do that again. And I'm going to export the channels, CS7000 channels. And then finally, I'm going to export the zones. All right, so that's been exported. So now I'm going to open up a Windows File Explorer, and we'll look at these files. So let's look at the, let's look at the contacts first. So one thing I noticed when I first opened the spreadsheet was the font. This is not a script I'm not used to. It's in another language. And I did do a translation. I don't remember at the top, right off the top of my head what that stands for. But one thing that I had to notice is that font is different than what we're normally used to. And as well, if I look at the channels file here, yeah, that was one thing that I noticed. And this channels has a variety of different worksheets. There's an analog channels, there's a digital channels, Easy Trunk. I've not used that before. But I attempted to write a program that I could output a spreadsheet and then import that spreadsheet directly into the codeplug software. But unfortunately, that wouldn't work. So what I found I had to do is I had to output the CSV and then copy and paste that on top of this information, and then it would import properly. So I just want to briefly show you what the spreadsheet looks like. It is a little bit non-standard than we're used to, but that's fine. We can handle it with the program that I wrote. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize everything here. And I have on my desktop, I've already created a shortcut. It's a batch file. If I edit this, it's a batch file where I just change my drive. I go into the folder where it's located. I run Python and I give the name of the GUI. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. But I'll double click the program and this is what it launches. What I provide is a couple options. The first is you pick if you want to import just digital channels into the codeplug, or if you want to do digital and analog. And that's what I want to do, digital and analog. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to pick where these things are going to be output, and well, where the inputs are coming from and where I want to output the resulting CSVs. So for this particular case, I have this set to a previous location, so I need to pick the particular file that from Rob's codeplug. So I'm going to pick the contacts file, and I'm going to go into the CS7000 input folder. And remember, I have Rob's information there. So I'm picking the contacts file. And we see that's been updated. Now I need to select the channels file. And it's nice it remembers where it was located. So I'll do channels next. And then I'll do the zones file. Right, so all these three are in the KC3WT. Now for the output directory, I'm going to save this into a new folder. I'm going to call this output. And I'm going to call it a new folder, converted KC3, Whiskey Uniform Tango. And I'm going to write the output there. Now, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and exit the software first, so it'll save those directories. And then, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. All right, now I'm going to pick, I want to do digital and analog channels, and I just click the Convert Code Plug button, and it's done. That's it. So we'll start with the contacts file. This is the talk groups, and these are all the talk groups from Rob's code plug that have been created here. There's the two separate spreadsheets for the analog and digital channels. So let's open the analog first. So we have the local repeaters, and you'll notice all of these are in the UHF range. The VHF have been excluded from this because this is not a VHF radio. And then let's see, I'll open up the channels file for DMR. And here's all the DMR settings. And then finally, we have one more file, it's the zones file. Okay, so what I will do is I'll go ahead and start with the channels file. So this is the channels. I'm sorry, not the channels. I'll start with the talk groups or the contacts. So in order to import this, I'm going to have to select the fields. So I'm going to do click on the cell A2. I'm going to do Shift Control left. I'm sorry, Shift Control right, Shift Control and hold it down, and that'll select that area. I'll hit Control C to copy. And now what I'll do is I'm going to open the spreadsheet for I'm going to open up the spreadsheet for the zones for the CS7000. So I'm not seeing the folder here. I'll just do browse. Right. So I put that in. Right. So I put that in the CS. I put that in the CS7000 output folder, and I have the CS7000 default. So I'm going to go ahead and open the contacts file. Now at this point, I'm going to select the first row, so Control Shift right, and I'm going to do paste, but I'm not going to paste this as normal. I'm going to do something called paste values. And the reason I'm going to do that is I don't want to overwrite into these cells with formats or other kind of information. I did this earlier when I was programming this. I noticed when I pasted cells by default value, some of the information came over and messed up importing the file into the codeplug software. Not sure exactly what it was. It had to do with one of the field names, field values. But this is actually, the paste values will just paste the actual text value. So I've already done that. I want to go ahead and save this file because we're done with that one, and I'll close it. And we've also done the contacts. I'm going to close this one out. Okay, so now we've done the contacts. Let's go ahead and do the zones. Same thing here, Control Shift left, Control Shift down. One thing that you need to make sure of is if you had some of these rows that extend out here where there's other cells, you have to make sure you copy all those that had values in it. So for this particular case, the way the zones are written, the zone number goes, each row is a zone, and the columns are the names of the channels in that zone. So it just worked out that the first row had the most channels in it. If you had a case where maybe the ninth row had the most, and there's things over here, you have to make sure you're selecting all of those when you copy it over. So again, I'm going to do Control C to copy. Now I need to open up that zones file. So I'm going to do a browse again. And this is under the default zones. And here again, I'm just going to, in this case, I'm going to delete. Well, I should have done that. I got to go back, sorry. So I'm going to do a Control C, go back here, And I'm going to do a paste values. And then there they are. They've been pasted, and the format for the font is the same. So I'll go ahead and save that file. Now we're done with zones. So I'm going to close the zones. Now with the channels, we have two separate channel files. One is the analog channels and the other is the digital. So I'll do analog first. Control Shift right and down, and Control C to copy. Now I'll open, there's only one file in here for the channels for the CS7000. And recall that it's the tabs. So I'm in the analog channels tab, and I'm going to do a paste special and paste the values. So that's been written. I'll go ahead and save that. Next, I'll go over here to the digital channels portion. And I've already done the analog channel, so now I need to copy the digital ones. Control Shift right, down, Control C. All right, now go to the second row, paste special, values, and there we are. So I saved the file to make sure everything's good. So at this point, we are finished with creating the spreadsheets that we will import back into the codeplug software. So you have to close all of these out. Otherwise, you'll get a file permissions error. So I'll just look at my background and no more spreadsheets there. Okay, great. So let's go back to, at this point, we're done with the codeplug software. Well, I'll show you this as well. I have a little bit of a debug printout that I do filter channels out based upon the VHF. So the list here is all the VHF channels that were not imported. If I were happen to only pick to import digital channels, this list would grow longer because any of the analog UHF channels would be excluded from the codeplug as well, which I don't want to do that. I want to have this codeplug to have UHF analog channels. So we're done with that conversion. We can go ahead and click the exit button, and that'll be finished. And let's go back to the CPS program. So now, just to show you that we don't have any channels in here, actually we have some, but they're the default, like just a simple, one channel each. I'm going to import the information. Now, for this particular case, you have to do this in the correct order in order for things to work. We're going to start with importing the digital contacts. So I'm going to import, and the folder I want, it's the same folder, the output CS7000 default. We're going to start with contacts. So I'm going to select the contacts and then click open. And here's an issue, incorrect format. So let me go back to my spreadsheet and see what is going on here. Okay, I'm back. I took a look at the spreadsheet. This is for the contacts itself, and I had to make a change here. My program was outputting for some reason for receive tone none, and it should have been outputting no. So I went ahead and made that change. And we'll go back to the CPS software here, and I'm going to go ahead and do a tools, import digital contact, and I want to pick this one. And it has been imported successfully. So that will be listed under, so all of that's been imported. Zones channel, roaming. There it is. So under the DMR services menu, under contact, it lists the call alias, the group call, the call ID, and there's no receive tone. So, and you'll notice that the Group call has multiple people, and then the private calls have one person. So now that we have the contacts imported successfully, I'm going to go ahead and re-import the channels so that the groups will be properly mapped to the channels. So go under Tools, Import Channels, and the channels file is what I want to open here. Channels have been imported successfully. And I can go under the conventional channels. And with DMR, that's what I want to go to see if the names appear properly. And they have. I have, right here I have the channel list. So worldwide, right, for the talk group, and worldwide. So everything looks like it's properly been imported. I shouldn't have to worry about the zones. That should have imported properly because I already had the channels, but I'll just go ahead and do that for good measure. I'll import the zones. And there we are. So everything has been properly imported. So at this point, I'm going to save the file. I'll do File Save As. And then under the output folder, I'm going to go ahead and go into this converted Kilo Charlie 3 Whiskey Uniform Tango folder. And I'm going to call it 2024 1230 KC3WT CS7000 code plug. All right, now I don't have the radio here with me. Rob has that back at his house, but to program it, you just go under the communications port, you would pick the USB, and then you would pick write to radio. You would write the code plug out, and then it would reboot the radio. The thing I will mention, you have to be in DMR mode in order for that to work properly. And let me check on the analog channels, make sure they are there, and they are there. And one thing that I will point out is this particular channel bandwidth field. By default, the CPS software only supports 12.5 bandwidth channels for kilohertz. We want that to be 25 on the local repeaters. And the way that you can override that is, minimize everything here. I'm going to go ahead and open on my desktop. I have a folder here, well, an application. This is the code plug. So I'm going to right click that and click Properties. And now under the target, I noticed that this is the location, the folder where it's installed. So after the end of where the application is installed, you need to add a -K, minus capital K character. And what that'll tell the CPS software to do is allow you to write 25 kilohertz channels out to the radio. So that's been done. All that's left is for me to email this to Rob and to have him go ahead and write the code plug to his radio, and he'll be up and running again. So I hope you found this video informative and helpful. Did not go into much detail about the M17 voice mode, but wanted to kind of go through the process of how you can convert the Anytone code plug into the CPS format needed to write it to the CS7000. The source code that I've written in Python is available on my GitHub page at K3JSJ, and please feel free to use that source code as you see fit. If you see any bugs or encounter any issues, you can email me at k3jsj@arrl.net. So thank you for watching this video, and hope this has been helpful. And please tune in for future videos on M17 and other amateur radio topics.